Welcome to SomnoTales History for Sleep, a place where stories drift slowly and time fades gently into dreams. Tonight, let your thoughts settle and your breath slow as we descend together into the ancient, silent world beneath the earth, the underworld. This is not a tale of fear or fire. It is a quiet journey through forgotten rivers, patient gods, and resting souls. Close your eyes now. Let go of the day. This is the entire story of the underworld, told softly, slowly, and just for you. Asterisk asterisk in the space between breath and stillness, between a final heartbeat and whatever comes next, there is a passage not often spoken of in noise or light. It is the ancient place beneath the world, a realm both feared and forgotten, where time does not rush and silence is deeper than any ocean. This is the underworld. To understand it is not to conquer it, nor to fully remember it, but simply to listen, slowly, gently, as one might listen to the echo of footsteps in a distant corridor. The underworld does not announce itself. It unfolds, piece by piece, like mist curling across an untouched lake at dawn. At the edge of this hidden realm lies the river Styx. It does not rage like a mountain stream, nor glitter like a sea. Its waters are still and dark, so dark they absorb the stars themselves. When mortals die, their souls find their way to its banks. There, among the stone paths and pale reeds, stands a small wooden dock. And at that dock, always waiting, is Sharon. Sharon is the ferryman, but he has no need for rest, for he exists outside time. He wears a cloak of coarse, time-worn fabric that moves only when the wind of passing souls stirs it. His eyes are deep and colorless, but not cruel. In his hand, he holds in or polished smooth by the quiet work of centuries. Souls arrive with coins placed beneath their tongues, fair for the passage across. Not all remember the coin. Not all had families to bury them with proper rites. Those without payment must wander the shore, invisible to one another, half-formed and weightless, listening to the water they cannot cross. But those who have the coin, silver, gold, or whatever token love could afford, step into Karen's boat and take the slow journey inward. The boat is not large, but it never fills. It glides without sound, parting the Styx like a memory drifting across sleep. No, one speaks. There is nothing to say. The river carries the weight of thousands of years, and even the air feels old. Along the banks, pale flowers grow. Not bright blossoms, but gentle things, ghostly petals that never open or close, simply existing in half-bloom. Trees lean over the river, their limbs like the hands of giants who have long since forgotten how to hold anything. Some say the trees remember the voices of those who once wept beneath them. Others believe they hum lullabies in a tongue only the dead can hear. The Styx does not rush. It knows there is no need. All things come to it in the end. After what feels like hours, or perhaps only moments, the boat reaches the plane of judgment. It is not a courtroom, not in the way mortals think. There are no torches, no scrolls, no angry gods shouting accusations. It is a wide field of gray stone and silver dust, where three figures wait beneath a sky that neither brightens nor darkens. These are the judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. They were once kings, men who ruled wisely and died knowing more than most. Now, they sit upon thrones that rise not from gold or marble, but from stone worn smooth by uncountable footsteps. Each judge sees the soul before them, not just their appearance, but everything. Their life unfurls like a tapestry in the still air. Childhood fears, whispered promises, quiet betrayals, and unspoken kindnesses. The soul does not need to speak. Its deeds speak for it. And the judges listen. They do not weigh sins on a scale, nor do they measure virtue in coin. Instead, they look into the fabric of the soul, how it moved through the world, how it loved, how it faltered. They make no grand declarations. There is no gavel, no sentence, only a nod, a glance, and the pointing of a hand. Some are directed to the fields of asphodel. A flat, endless plain covered in faint grass and low-lying fog. The air here smells of dust and faint lilies. The souls who walk here do not cry. They do not sing. They simply are. Most mortals end up here, not punished, not rewarded, but forgotten in the softest way possible. They wander slowly, murmuring old names they no longer recognize. They walk paths worn smooth by centuries of aimless steps. In the distance, lo, hills rise and fall like sleeping giants, never waking, never watching. There is no pain here, and yet no joy. It is the place where ambition fades, where memory loosens its grip, where the noise of the living world dies down to the softest whisper. Others are pointed toward Elysium. This is a different place entirely. Elysium lies beyond a gentle ridge and through a grove of silvery poplars. The air there is always warm, like early summer. The breeze smells of rain and ripe fruit. The sun shines in a sky that never burns, and laughter comes not from mouths, but from the rustle of trees and the clear trickle of brooks. Those who reach Elysium do not remember every detail of their life, but they remember the feeling of goodness, the comfort of a home, the touch of a hand held in trust, the joy of giving more than taking. Here, they rest in gardens that bloom forever. Time passes, but no one counts it. Sleep and waking feel the same. It is not paradise. It is peace. The rarest fate is Tartarus, if Elysium is reward, and asphodel the soft forgetting. Tartarus is the deep chamber of memory that cannot be erased. It lies below even the Styx, hidden in the folds of the earth. Not many are sent there. Only those whose lives bent toward cruelty with joy, who caused pain not from ignorance, but from delight. Here, the silence is thick and pressing. Shadows cling to the walls. And yet, it is not fire and torment. It is loneliness, the kind that cannot be filled, the kind that echoes endlessly with the names of those they harmed. There, in the deepest gloom, even the titans sleep. They are not monsters. They are remnants of an older world, a time before the gods we now remember. They once reached for the stars and were cast down. In Tartarus, they lie bound not by chains, but by memory, endless, heavy, inescapable. But most souls do not see this place. Most souls, after judgment, are simply guided away. The guides of the underworld are not terrifying beings. They are gentle presences, shadows with human shape, who do not speak but understand. They lead the soul by the hand, like a child being walked home after a long day. And as the soul moves on, it begins to forget. Not all at once, not painfully, but, like a candle burning down to a soft glow, the names of loved ones fade. The taste of food becomes distant. The feel of wind on skin becomes only a curiosity, and in its place, a calmness grows. The soul becomes lighter. Not happy, perhaps, but unburdened. No more need to decide. No more weight to carry. The underworld does not punish most who come to it, does not fear the living, nor does it hunger for the dead. That it simply waits. Always, its stones remember every footstep. Its waters remember every tear. But it holds no grudges. It moves as it always has, slowly, gently, without end. And now, as you lay still and listen to this tale, you may feel the rhythm of that ancient realm echo in your breath. You are not there, not yet, but to imagine it is to be cradled by silence. To feel the hush of that place is to understand that even endings can be soft. In the underworld, nothing hurries. And so, you don't need to either. Rest easy now. Beyond the plane of judgment, once the judges have quietly gestured a soul onward, lies a gentle slope covered in a pale, silvery moss. The air changes there, not colder or warmer, but quieter somehow, as though it had shed even the soft noise of thought. Souls walk this path without urgency. The ones sent to the fields of asphodel do not rush, for they have no destination, and yet they are not lost. The fields are endless. Not in the way mortals fear, but in the way dreams are endless, soft-edged, never fully formed, always continuing. The ground beneath the soul's feet feels neither hard nor soft. It simply exists, holding them like a cradle. Gray grass moves as if wind were passing through it, though there is no wind. The sky is an ash-colored dome, not dark but never bright. Always suspended in a perfect, changeless dusk. Here, souls do not speak. Or if they do, the words are as light as mist and vanish before they reach another's ear. Some sit, their legs folded like forgotten statues. Others wander without knowing why. There is no sorrow among them, nor is there joy, just quiet endurance. And in that quiet, something soothing takes hold, a kind of gentle release, the fading of memory not as a loss, but as a blessing. The souls in Asphodel are those who lived neither cruelly nor brilliantly. They were bakers, shepherds, woodcutters, mothers, and daughters. They were forgotten kings and nameless soldiers. People who lived entire lives without their names being carved into marble or inked into scrolls. In life, they worked and laughed and ached. In death, they drift, not as punishment, but as part of the natural stillness of all things that a soft river curves through the fields. It has no banks and no bridges cross it. This is the river Lethe. Its name means forgetfulness. The Lethe flows with water so clear it cannot be seen. Only its sound, a sound like distant rainfall or leaves brushing against one another, tells you it is there. It winds like a ribbon, gliding between souls, weaving memory into silence. Many souls come to the Lethe in time. Some kneel beside it and cup its waters in their hands. Others touch it with a single fingertip. A few plunge in entirely, their forms dissolving into the shimmer. What they forget is not chosen. The river takes what it will, but always, it leaves peace in return that a soul who has drunk from Lethe will no longer ache for the warmth of the sun or the laughter of a child. They will no longer recall the sound of their own name. Instead, they will feel only calm, a presence without weight, a silence without fear. There are those who resist. Some souls linger at the river's edge, watching others drink. They cling to memories of lovers lost, of mistakes uncorrected, of moments they cannot release. But even they soften over time. The river is patient. It does not call to them, yet it waits. And slowly, gently, even the most stubborn souls step forward and bow their heads. The Lethe is not cruel. It is the kindness of forgetting. The fields of Asphodel stretch on, but they do not change. There are no walls, no gates, no markers to say where one soul ends and another begins. Sometimes, two souls may pass close enough to almost touch. In that moment, perhaps something stirs, a half-memory of a hand held or a laugh shared. But it fades quickly. In Asphodel, nothing clings. Once. In a great while, a soul will stop walking and look upward, toward that soft gray sky, as though sensing something. These are the rare few who begin to remember not life, but the idea of life, a fragment of wonder, a trace of longing for something else. These souls are sometimes reborn, and no one knows why it happens, or how. They are simply drawn to the Lethe, one final time, and as they drink, their essence loosens like steam rising from water. Somewhere, in the world of the living, a child takes its first breath. And within that breath, perhaps, the faintest wisp of the underworld clings, unnoticed, but present. But most remain, and they do not mind. The Asphodel fields do not demand. They offer rest without boundaries. They cradle the weary, the ordinary, the countless forgotten lives whose stories mattered to someone once, even if history did not remember them. If you could walk among these souls, you might pass the shadow of a poet whose verses were never read, or the whisper of a fisherman who loved the sea more than words could say. You might feel the presence of a weaver who once dreamed of stars, or a teacher who gave wisdom freely and never expected praise. All of them are here, not as punishment, not as reward, just here. In the underworld, the absence of ambition is not emptiness. It is peace. Sometimes, Persephone walks through these fields. She does not wear a crown here. Her footsteps do not stir the dust. The souls do not bow. She is not a queen in Asphodel, but a comfort. Wherever she walks, the color shifts faintly, as if the memory of spring follows her. Flowers that do not bloom might lean toward her just a little. The Lethe's song may rise slightly in pitch, and the souls near her, though they do not speak, seem to grow more still, as though remembering something kind. She does not stay long, just long enough to remind the fields that they are seen. Then she drifts away, like a warm breeze that leaves behind the scent of lilacs, long after it's gone. The fields may seem dull to the living, empty of drama or meaning, but in truth, they hold the heart of all stories. For most lives are not filled with glory or shame. Most lives are quiet. They are made of little moments, bread broken between friends, hands held in darkness, small kindnesses given without thought of reward in asphodel. These moments are not celebrated, nor are they forgotten. They are simply allowed to rest. Further, into the fields, where the lethe fades into fog, there is a gentle hill. Upon it stands a single tree, gnarled, leafless, ancient. It has stood there for longer than memory. Some say it once grew on the surface world, and when the underworld formed, it sank into the soil and took root again. Beneath this tree, certain souls sit in quiet reflection. They are not different from the others, but something in them lingers. Perhaps they were storytellers in life. Perhaps they were listeners. They do not speak now, but if you were to sit beside them long enough, you might feel the faintest stirring of old tales, stories not told aloud, but passed in stillness, like dreams shared between sleepers. One such soul once watched over a child who became a great leader. Another once gave a traveler water and was never thanked. A third never left her village, but loved it with all her heart. They do not remember these things, but the earth does, and in the stillness of the fields, beneath the tree that has forgotten its name, those memories rest, not as burdens, but as roots. There are no endings in the fields of asphodel, only pause. Only the long exhale after a lifetime's worth of breath. The underworld is not a place of darkness. Not truly. It is a place of quiet, and the fields are its softest song. Let your breath match their stillness now. You are not walking there, but you are close enough to feel it, close enough to rest, close enough to forget, if only for a little while. Close enough to sleep. There was a time when she danced in meadows, her laughter rising like birds into the clear air. She wore garlands of flowers and walked barefoot through green grass that never seemed to dull beneath her step. She was Persephone then, maiden of spring, daughter of Demeter, beloved of all things that bloomed and grew. But the world changes, and stories unfold in slow spirals. One day, she bent to pluck a narcissus flower, a bloom more radiant than the rest, and as her fingers closed around it, the earth beneath her feet gave a long, slow sigh. A crack opened, not violent, not loud. It was as though the ground had simply remembered something it had forgotten. From that quiet chasm rose Hades. He did not storm the earth. He did not shout. His eyes were not cruel, nor was his face terrible. He looked at her the way night looks at the last light of day, quietly, reverently, knowing it must come to him eventually. And he extended his hand. Persephone did not cry out. She did not resist. Perhaps she was curious. Perhaps some part of her had always known that spring cannot remain forever. She took his hand, and so, the earth closed gently behind her. Downward they traveled, not falling, but descending like leaves drifting through water. Through caves and quiet tunnels, past sleeping roots and veins of forgotten stone, until they reached the underworld. There, he gave her a throne beside his own. Not because he wished to rule her, but because he wished her to stand with him. The underworld had never known flowers before her. It had never known color that wasn't gray or black or deep silver. And in her presence, things began to shift. She walked its halls with silent grace. Her footsteps made no sound, yet the walls seemed to lean toward her, as though remembering warmth. Her breath stirred the air, and pale vines began to creep along. The stones, they bore no blossoms, but they moved with life, and that was enough. First, she mourned. Quietly, gently. She missed the sun, the wind, the endless green. But the underworld did not punish her sorrow. It waited, silently, until her grief softened into stillness, and then into something else. Not joy, but understanding. She came to see what Hades saw. That death was not an enemy. It was not cruel. It was simply part of the rhythm. She met the judges. She walked among the shades. She touched the waters of the lethe and felt the weight of memory dissolve, if only slightly. The souls did not tremble before her. They looked at her with something like recognition, as if she, too, knew what it meant to be between two worlds. In time, she no longer felt like a visitor. She became queen, but not the kind who rules with decree or sword. Persephone's reign was gentler than that. The souls felt it in the stillness. The rivers flowed more smoothly. Even Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the gates, would lean toward her when she passed, his eyes softening, like those of an old hound comforted by a familiar voice. And Hades? He did not try to possess her, he did not lock her away in her. He found not light to banish darkness, but a quiet balance, like moonlight on water, soft and sure. They spoke little, but when they did, their words were slow, meaningful. They walked together through the halls of the dead, not as captor and captive, but as two quiet shadows whose paths had found each other. Yet, the world above noticed her absence. Demeter, goddess of harvest and mother of Persephone, searched high and low. Fields withered, trees shed their leaves. The earth cried out in longing, in hunger. Mortals starved, animals fled. Time itself seemed to pause in a long, barren sigh at last. Demeter found the truth, and when she did, the world trembled, not with war, but with grief. She demanded her daughter's return. Zeus, king of gods, tried to balance the scales. Hades said nothing, but offered no resistance. He merely looked to Persephone and asked, softly, whether she wished to go. She said yes. But she had eaten 6 seeds of a pomegranate while in the underworld. Just 6, taken not in hunger, but in curiosity. And because of that, a rule older than gods bound her. She must return each year to the underworld for 6 months. And for 6 months, she would live above, among the blossoms, with her mother once more as, oh, it was agreed. Thus began the turning of seasons. When Persephone rose to the surface, the earth woke with her. Buds opened. Rain fell sweetly. Grain rose. Lambs were born. And when she descended again, the land quieted, holding its breath until her return. But she did not weep when it was time to go back. Not anymore. Because she was not only a maiden of spring. She was queen below, and the souls of the underworld awaited her, not as subjects, but as weary children waiting for the calm hand of someone who understands both light and darkness. She would walk again through the asphodel fields, her presence a comfort. She would sit in the hall of judgment, her gaze steady and kind. She would stand beside Hades, not behind him. Some say she brought changes with her each time, that the river, Lethe, glowed a little brighter when she drank from it, that the trees near the Elysian fields sometimes bore fruit when she passed, that the pale vines she planted on her first arrival still grow, winding gently across stone, softening edges that were once sharp. She did not forget the world above, but she no longer feared the world below. She knew now that both belonged to her, that in her heart lived both bloom and stillness, beginning and ending, song and silence. She is the reason the underworld is not merely a place of endings. She is the reason it has rhythm, because even the dead, even the quiet stones and rivers, need seasons, and with each return, Persephone brings the faintest scent of life with her, not to disrupt, not to awaken, but simply to remind that nothing is truly alone, that even in shadow, there is presence, that even in silence, there is memory. And now, as your breath falls into that same soft rhythm, you can feel her walking gently through your thoughts, placing one quiet foot after another. She does not disturb your sleep. She blesses it. She is the hush before dreams, the calm between sorrow and forgetting, the queen who waits beneath the world, holding the slow heartbeat of the earth in her open, quiet hands. Sleep now. You are walking with her, and where she goes, all things find rest. The underworld, though still, is not empty. Beneath the hush and soft soil, it flows with memory, not only in the hearts of the dead, but through its rivers, 5 ancient paths that wind silently through its shadowed realm, each carrying not water, but feeling that you've met the river Styx, the boundary river, solemn and dark, where souls first arrive and begin their journey inward. But Styx is only one voice in a quiet chorus. Listen now, not with ears, but with breath, and you may feel the flow of the others. There is Acheron, the river of sorrow. Its waters are gentle, but they do not soothe. They carry the tears that were never shed, the sorrow that could not be spoken aloud. Along its misty banks wander souls who grieved deeply in life, those who held silent burdens, who buried their pain to protect others, who longed for comfort but never asked. Here, sorrow is not shameful. It is respected. The Acheron whispers softly to those who pass, not reminding them of sadness, but honoring it. Its currents murmur like lullabies to those who weep without reason. You cannot rush past it. It slows you, not to trap you, but to allow you to rest. A place where crying is not loud or sudden, but a slow release, like fog lifting from a sleeping valley. Next is Cocytus, the river of wailing. Yet even here, there are no screams. Cocytus no longer roars as it once did in early myths. Time has gentled it. Now, its cries are faint and far away, like voices remembered in dreams. Some souls wander here longer than others. These are the ones whose pain was never heard in life, the ignored, the silenced, the ones who suffered. Quietly while the world passed them by, Cocytus cradles their sorrow like a forgotten melody. The wind along its banks rises in slow crescendos, lifting invisible echoes that have nowhere else to go. It is not a place of torment now. It is simply where the unheard are finally noticed. And there is Phlegethon, once the river of fire.in. Ancient times, poets spoke of it blazing and devouring, a flame flowing like lava through the shadows. But like everything in the underworld, Phlegethon has changed. Now, it glows like embers in a long-cooled hearth. It moves slowly, casting soft red light across blackened stones. It no longer burns. It warms. Those who come here are not the wrathful, but the passionate, the souls who burned brightly in life, who loved fiercely, who created and destroyed in equal measure. Their fires have dimmed in death, but the glow remains, flickering gently in the dark, lighting small alcoves of memory. The river does not speak. It radiates, not rage, but longing, not destruction, but intensity remembered in silence. And finally, there is Lethe, the river you already know, the river of forgetfulness, where the soul lays down its burdens, surrenders its names, and slips into peace. Each river, in its own way, carries a piece of the soul. They do not flow apart, but wind through the underworld like threads in a great, quiet tapestry. The souls who wander from one to another are not trapped, but exploring the full shape of their rest. Even the gods have walked these banks. There is a story the underworld tells quietly, like a secret past between shadows. It is the story of Orpheus. He was a mortal, a poet, a musician. His voice held the power to make trees lean forward, to calm wild beasts, to make even stones sigh. When his beloved, Eurydice, died too soon, bitten by a snake on their wedding day, Orpheus refused to accept it. That he descended, not with sword or spell, but with song. And as he sang, the underworld listened. The judges paused. The fields of asphodel grew quiet. Even Lethe's currents slowed. Cerberus, the three-headed guardian at the gates, sat silently, lulled by the melody that trembled through Orpheus' fingers. Persephone listened. Her eyes softened. And even Hades, the quiet king, tilted his head, not in pity, but in wonder. For never before had someone brought such beauty into this place of endings. They allowed Eurydice to return with him. On one condition, he must not look back. He must walk ahead of her, through the tunnels and mists, through the long halls of stone, and trust that she followed. Orpheus agreed, and so they climbed. But the underworld tests not with violence, but with silence, and silence can be unbearable. Orpheus walked for what felt like hours, feeling her footsteps behind him, hearing nothing, no voice, no breath, just the slow echo of his own fear. He reached the surface. Light returned, and he turned. Just before she stepped into the light, she was pulled back, softly, silently. Gone. The underworld does not punish. It does not gloat. It simply holds what belongs to it. Orpheus left alone, his music forever changed. And deep in the fields of asphodel, sometimes, if the wind stirs a certain way, you can hear a soul humming a melody that feels like longing, a song without words, drifting over quiet grass. Cerberus heard it, too. Cerberus, the great hound with 3 heads, guards the entrance to the underworld. But he is not a monster. His heads do not snarl. They observe. Point 1 head watches the past. Point 1 watches the present. Point 1 watches what lies just ahead. Together, they see all who arrive. He does not bark at the dead. They have no need to fear him. He only growls at the living who try to sneak in, or, worse, those who try to take someone out. But to those who belong, he is a gentle presence. His fur is like night sky, his eyes like flickering lamps in the mist. Sometimes, when a soul is frightened or unsure, He walks beside them for a while, until they feel safe enough to continue alone. And in quiet corners of the underworld, where the rivers flow slow and warm, there are whispers of other travelers, heroes, who came for glory, for rescue, for defiance. But their stories end not in triumph, but in humility. For no matter how strong, how clever, or how brave, all eventually realize that the underworld is not to be conquered, only understood, only accepted. Even the gods tread carefully here. They do not rule it. They visit, as one might visit an old house, with many memories. Sometimes Hermes, the messenger, guides souls along the riverbanks, his sandals quiet against the stone. Sometimes Hecate, the torchbearer, drifts through the shadows, her lights revealing what wishes to be seen. But always, the underworld remains itself a realm of rivers, of echo and hushed, of music remembered, of fire cooled to embers, and of sorrow softened into song. And now, as you listen, you might feel those rivers too, flowing not around you, but through you, carrying away what you don't need. Gently, softly, without force. The underworld does not rush. It does not demand. It invites. Let go. To rest. To sleep. And if, in sleep, you find yourself drifting toward one of those ancient rivers, know that it will not pull you under. It will carry you, just as it carries all things, toward stillness, toward silence, toward peace. Deep in the bowels of the underworld, farther than most souls ever go, where the light of rivers fades and even memory grows thin, lies a realm of silence within silence. It is Tartarus, not a prison in the mortal sense. There are no chains clanging, no screams echoing from cavern walls. Tartarus is too old for that, too still. It predates judgment, predates death itself in some myths, and in its hollow depths, time does not merely slow, it forgets to move at all. Here lie the titans, not demons, not villains. They are the first, the elder forces that shaped the cosmos before the gods were born. Cronus, who devoured his children to delay his end. Iapetus, father of Prometheus, who gave fire to mortals. Ceus, Crius, Hyperion. Their names drift across the shadows like weathered runes, faded from the tongues of men but carved into the bones of the earth. They do not sleep. They do not wake. They endure. Tartarus is not a place of suffering, but of still containment. The Titans are not punished with fire or whip. They are held in a kind of forgotten peace, a peace that comes when the world no longer calls your name. They drift in darkness, remembering the stars they once touched, the sky they once held in their hands. Now, only the earth remembers them, and it does not speak. Tartarus does not spread. It does not threaten. It simply remains, beneath the underworld, beneath everything. Even Hades does not linger here long, that he walks the threshold when needed. A silent presence acknowledging those who were powerful enough to shape the world, yet now exist as whispers. He does not fear them. He understands them, because he, too, is shaped by waiting. The underworld has always waited for the living to die, for the loud to grow quiet, for everything that begins to return home. Above, mortals dream of glory, of immortality. But even the most heroic name eventually softens, worn away by time, by retelling, by silence. And when it does, the underworld receives it gently, not with fanfare, but with understanding. Some souls choose to return to life, to drink from Lethe and begin again. Others remain, drifting gently between fields and rivers, resting in the presence of Persephone or walking aimlessly beside Cerberus, who never sleeps but does occasionally sit and listen. A few, though rare, reach a quiet awareness. They no longer cling to life, nor long for rebirth. They become something else, part of the underworld itself. A sigh in the stone, a ripple in the river, a soft breeze in a corridor where none walk. Even the underworld has memories, and it keeps them with care. There is a tree that grows near the entrance to Tartarus. Its bark is black, its leaves made of silver so thin they tremble at the softest breeze. No fruit grows on it, no bird nests in its branches. Yet it hums, an almost inaudible tone that sings of patience, of eternity, of things too old for words. Hades touches its trunk when he passes. He does not speak to it. He simply places his palm against it, and the tree seems to exhale, not from lungs, but from presence. The dead do not come here. It is not their place. It is a place of resting forces, of finalities that do not need closure. And then, Hades returns to his hall. The hall of Hades is not gilded. It is not adorned with trophies or spoils. It is vast, empty in places, warm in others. Its walls are carved with symbols no living scholar has ever seen. Its ceiling shifts gently like water, as though made of shadowy clouds. Persephone sits beside him when she is there. She brings with her light, not bright, but soft, like a memory of day filtered through closed eyes. In her hands, she carries a bowl of seeds, though she eats none. Sometimes, the two sit for hours in silence. They do not need words. They understand the sacredness of stillness, and all around them, the underworld breathes, softly, rhythmically not like a mortal breath, but like the slow pulse of earth. Elsewhere, the rivers continue to wind. The Lethe flows quietly through the fields of asphodel, carrying away names and memories. It brushes past the edges of Elysium, though the souls there never drink. They've no need. They remember only warmth. The phlegathon glows dimly near a cluster of souls who once painted, who once composed, who once burned with vision. Their flames have gone out, but the echo of creation lingers, carried in soft red ripples. The Acheron moves slowly past a grove where weeping is neither shunned nor pitied. It is accepted. A soft chorus of sighs rises and falls there, not in sadness, but in reverence, and Cocytus carries the long silences of the unheard. Together, they make a music older than sound. And above, the surface world turns. Spring becomes summer, becomes fall, becomes winter, then begins again. Each year, Persephone ascends. She walks once more beneath the sky. Her presence stirs roots and calls forth blossoms. Demeter, her mother, breathes easier. The fields awaken. The lambs are born. The orchards stretch. But always, she returns, because part of her belongs to the underworld now. And she does not fight that truth. She embraces it. For without the silence below, the life above would have no rhythm. And when Persephone returns, the underworld shifts, not in dread, but in welcome. She walks the fields, touches the rivers, sits beneath the silver-leaf tree. Her fingers trail along stone halls, and where she walks, the quiet seems kinder. Even Cerberus stirs a little, his three heads turning to watch her pass. And somewhere, near the Lethe, a new soul arrives. They hesitate at the bank, look at their reflection, not frightened, just uncertain, and then they step forward, the water parting like silk. Behind them, the boat Charon once guided drifts away. Ahead, the mists curl open, revealing not darkness, but softness. The soul walks on, and the underworld, as always, waits, not hungry, not cruel, not eager, just present, just ready, for all things end, and all endings eventually settle here and now. As you lay still, your breath slow and even, know that you've walked with them tonight, not the dead, but the memory of peace. You've touched the edge of the quiet realm, where endings are not feared, but honored, where stories do not stop, they simply grow soft. And in that softness, sleep finds you, not with urgency, but with understanding. You are safe now, not in the underworld, but in its echo.in, its calm.in, its quiet. Sleep, traveler, the underworld is. Not the end.it is the stillness that holds all things when they are done. And in that stillness, you rest, gently, eternally, quietly. There are places in the underworld where the silence feels less like an end and more like a dream still forming. Among them lies the realm known to poets and sages as the Elysian Fields, a place not of reward, but of resonance. It is where the few souls who lived in harmony with the world are said to gently continue, not in grandeur, but in still beauty. Elysium is not a city of gold. There are no shining gates, no palaces made of fire or light. Instead, it stretches out like a quiet meadow on a day without time. The grass is not green but silver, waving softly without wind. The trees there hum, not with song, but with presence. And the air feels like the memory of peace before anyone ever named it. The souls who dwell in Elysium are not kings or conquerors. They are the ones who moved through life without resistance. The ones who healed, who forgave, who listened. They do not speak loudly here. They do not need to. Their stories drift among the leaves, passed gently like breath. There are no judgments in Elysium. The judges of the underworld do not assign souls here like prizes. Instead, the soul must find its way naturally. Some wander the fields of asphodel for centuries before they feel the pull. Others arrive without knowing how. But all who come feel the quiet welcome of the land before they ever take their first step into it. Some myths say the sky in Elysium is always dusk, neither day nor night, but the soft hush between. Others say it shifts to whatever the soul needs most, a golden field for one, a moonlit glade for another. And perhaps they are all true. The underworld is not bound to logic. It shapes itself by memory, desire, and surrender that I in the heart of. Elysium, near a grove of translucent olive trees, there is a stream. It is not one of the 5 great rivers. It has no name. It flows not with water, but with a kind of stillness that feels like knowing. Souls sit beside it and remember not their mortal lives, but something deeper, who they were before names. Before form. It is said that Orpheus found his way here at last, after his long grief was worn smooth by time. He no longer searched for Eurydice. He no longer played songs of longing. His music in Elysium is quieter, more like the hush of wind over tall grass. She heard it once and came to sit beside him. They said nothing. They simply existed. The souls of Elysium do not forget. They remember everything, but without weight. Their pasts are like constellations in a sky without clouds. They shine gently, but do not pull. They float in the memory of goodness, not as reward, but as return. And yet, some souls, even in peace, feel the faintest stirring, not of regret, not of restlessness, but of possibility. For in the farthest edge of Elysium stands a single tree. Its bark is smooth as bone, and its leaves are gold, not metal, but light, caught and held. It does not bear fruit. Instead, it bears a single choice, the choice of rebirth. A soul may sit beneath its branches for as long as it likes. There is no pressure, no call. But if, after rest, after reflection, after stillness, the soul reaches out and touches the trunk, something begins to shift. The tree trembles, and the light in its leaves begins to drift downward, wrapping the soul in a cocoon of warmth. Then, quietly, the soul fades from Elysium and wakes elsewhere. A new life, a new name, and no memory of before. But perhaps, somewhere in the folds of their spirit, a faint echo remains, a kindness with no cause, a wisdom beyond years, a tenderness unearned. These are the ones who seem born old, who smile with ancient eyes, who listen more than they speak. Not all choose to return. Some stay forever beneath the quiet skies of Elysium, and some, rare among even the rare, walk backward, not into rebirth, but into the greater silence. They choose to become one with the underworld itself, to dissolve into rivers, into stone, into the soft breath between judgment and peace. They do not fear forgetting. They welcome it, because to forget, fully, is also to rest. There is a room deep within Hades' hall known only to Persephone. It has no door, no guards, and no purpose but to hold stories that are no longer told. Inside are objects with no names. A brush once held by a woman who loved without reward. A feather from a bird that sang to a dying child. A pebble once tossed into the ocean by someone who believed it would bring rain. These things hum softly, not with power, but with presence. They are fragments of lives lived fully, not dramatically, but honestly. Persephone visits this room when she wants to remember not the great deeds of mortals, but their small kindnesses. And she smiles, not because she mourns them, but because she knows they mattered. And Hades? He listens more than he speaks. He watches the souls move through his realm like tides, rising, resting, returning. He does not control them. He does not shape their paths. He simply holds, for all things pass through him eventually, even gods, even memory, even myth. And so the underworld endures, not as punishment, not as darkness, but as the soft soil beneath all stories. You have now walked its rivers, stood in its fields, listened to its silence. You have seen the sorrow of Acheron, the glow of Phlegethon, the hush of Lethe. You have watched Persephone move with grace, and Hades with stillness. You have heard the echoes of Orpheus, the quiet of the Titans, the rustle of Elysian grass, and now, as your breath slows and your body sinks deeper into rest, know that you carry these myths not as burdens, but as blankets, light, warm, and woven from the same quiet threads that bind the stars to the sky. The underworld does not call you. It welcomes your rest beside it. You are not crossing over. You are simply drifting into stillness, into story, into sleep. Before the rivers flowed, before Hades held court, and before Persephone ever took her first breath in spring, there was only night, not the night as mortals know it, not darkness filled with stars or the quiet hush before dawn. This was the first night, the deep and boundless stillness that existed before time began to move. It was not empty. It was not cruel. It was simply waiting. And from that waiting came the first stirring. A breath without a mouth. A thought without a mind. A presence without shape. The Greeks called her Nyx, the primordial goddess of night, older than the Titans, older even than chaos itself in some tellings. She was not made. She was the first great stillness, the hush before existence. She moved in silence, not across land or sea, for those did not yet exist, but across potential. And with her came her children, not born in pain, nor joy, but as consequences of silence itself. They rose from her shadow like dreams forming in the dark. Among them, Hypnos, the god of sleep, soft-eyed and gentle Thanatos, the god of peaceful death, still as moonlight Eris, the murmur of discord Nemesis, the balance bringer Momos, the whisper of criticism Morai, the fates, spinning their unseen thread. But one of her children was different. Erebus, the god of shadow, not evil, not absence, but the deep space between. He was not her consort in the mortal sense. He was her mirror, where Nyx was the night itself, Erebus was its depth, the inner hollow. Together, they formed the earliest shape of what would one day become the underworld. There was no judgment in their realm, no division of good and evil, no reward or punishment. There was only settling, like ash drifting through an air too still. To carry it in this early underworld, there were no souls, only impressions, soft imprints of things yet to be. The gods had not yet warred. Mortals had not yet lived. But even in this silence, something was coming. Time. With it, form. With form, loss. And with loss, death. When Kronos stirred, the primordial force of time, he did not burst into the dark. He unfolded, slowly, like a slow-turning wheel. And the first night rippled. The hush cracked softly, and Nyx blinked, not in fear, but in awareness. Change had begun, and with change came chaos. Not disorder, but the fertile gap between what was and what might be. From chaos came Gaia, the earth. From Gaia, Uranus, the sky. From their union, the Titans. But Nyx and Erebus did not rise with them. They remained beneath, in the slow place, the place without urgency. As the world above burst into creation and conflict, they preserved the original rhythm, the rhythm of stillness. And when the Titans rose in strength and cast the sky down, and when Cronus swallowed his children to preserve his reign, and when Zeus led the younger gods in revolt, still, Nyx and Erebus did not move. They listened, they absorbed. The underworld began to form more clearly now, not as a punishment, but as a mirror of the sky. As Olympus climbed upward, the underworld deepened downward, a reflection, a balance. And when Zeus cast the defeated Titans into Tartarus, he did not build Tartarus. It was already there. Nyx had always known it. And so, deeper still than even the gods understood, the first shadows continued their quiet vigil. They did not resent their stillness. They did not crave the sun, because without stillness, nothing holds. Without silence, there is no song. In time, when the cosmos calmed, and mortals were shaped by Prometheus's hands, and breath was gifted into clay, the first death occurred. It was not violent. It was a soft exhale. An old woman, alone in the hills, who had spoken to no one for years. She looked at the stars, sighed, and did not wake. There was no one to carry her. No Sharon, no judges. But the underworld opened to her, and Nyx received her gently. There was no questioned no test. the soul simply settled. Like a leaf in water, she became the first whisper, the first ripple, the first dead. The gods soon noticed. They argued. What was to be done with mortals who passed? Was it a reward, a sentence? Hades, then newly appointed by the draw of lots, descended, not in conquest, but in awe. He did not arrive with fire or command. He stood in the deepest place, beneath even Tartarus. He placed his palm upon the ground, and the earth responded, not with words, but with yielding that it had waited for him. And with that touch, the underworld reshaped itself. Tartarus held what must be locked. The rivers began to wind, not of water, but of meaning. The Lethe flowed, its memory forgetting mist born from Nyx's own breath. Acheron, of sorrow, rose from the mourning of Gaia for her fallen children. Phlegethon, of fire, sparked from the first act of mortal rage. Cocytus, of weeping, from the first child lost in a storm. And Styx, the sacred river, from the vow of loyalty, when the Titans still trusted one another. All these were shaped not by hand, but by memory, by myth, by need. And the first soul still rested. The old woman does not speak. She has no name now, but her presence lingers in the underworld like a breath in a quiet room. Some say she sits beneath Nyx's cloak, nestled like a stone in the fold of a mountain. Others say she became the echo that gently follows every soul who enters after her, the kind of welcoming silence, not the cold of nothing, but the warmth of being held. Even now, Hades walks sometimes to the deepest chamber, beyond the reach of river or torch. There, Nyx remains, not asleep, not forgotten, but present. They do not speak. They do not need to. The god of the dead bows his head to the goddess of silence. And for a time, the endless hush of the underworld grows even softer. Because in this place, before death was death, before stories were told, there was simply waiting. And in that waiting, still, the underworld remembers its first promise that hold all things gently, endlessly. In quiet. Asterisk in the great rhythm of the underworld, most souls eventually drift. They pass through the gates. They cross the rivers. They settle into fields, into judgment, into rest. But not all. Some resist the flow, not violently, not rebelliously, but quietly. They simply stay. These are the ghosts, not the ones who haunt, not the ones who rage, but the ones who hesitate. The ones who sit at the edge of Lethe and never sip. The ones who reach the judge's chamber and turn back without stepping forward. The ones who are not ready. Not every soul who resists becomes a ghost, but some do. Not because they were bad, nor because they were punished, but because they carried something heavier than regret. They carried unfinished memory. There is a grove in the underworld. It lies beyond the judge's hall, past where Charon docks his silent boat, and before the mists of Lethe rise. This grove is not marked, but souls find their way there. It is quiet, as all places below are, but here, the quiet feels almost alert. The trees are pale, not with death, but with memory, bark streaked with faint echoes, branches bent with the weight of recollection. This is where the ghosts gather. They are not lost. They are holding on. Some sit and replay the same moment again and again. The last time they held someone's hand, the sound of their child's laughter, the feeling of standing in sunlight. Just once more, these are not delusions. The underworld does not mock the dead. These are echoes, echoes kept alive by will. They do not disturb the flow. They simply pause it. Some of these ghosts eventually move on. A leaf falls. A memory softens. They look up. And finally, they rise. They follow the wind and let go. But some never do. These are the ancient ghosts. The ones who have remained longer than Olympus has stood. They are not malevolent. They are not forgotten. They are keepers. Keepers of stories no longer told, of songs no longer sung, that if you listen closely in the grove, you may hear whispers in languages lost to time. You may see souls sitting beside shadows of things that no longer exist, cities gone to sand, oceans reshaped by mountains. They do not mourn. They remember. And in their remembering, they preserve. One such ghost is called Aeon. His name has faded from mortal tongues, but he was once a shepherd on a hill that no longer exists. Before the gods even drew lots to divide the world, he lived simply, tended sheep, wrote songs on smooth stones, watched the stars change, When he died, no one noticed. No god claimed him. No river called that he arrived in the underworld not with a guide, but with a hum. And he Saturday, and he stayed, because in his soul was a tune no one else remembered. He hums it still today. Song of stars before they were named. He has become part of the grove now. His form is light and wind, his breath the breeze through memory that if a soul passes him, he hums a little louder, just in case they remember it too. Another ghost, older still, is the Naya. She once spoke for a people with no written language, only ritual and rhythm. She danced her memories. Each motion was a line of verse. When she died, her people had already begun to forget. So she danced in the underworld, alone, at first, then slowly. Shapes joined her, shadows moved in rhythm. Even the dust beneath her feet lifted into soft patterns. She does not seek rebirth. She does not seek Elysium. She only seeks to keep moving. Because in movement, memory survives. Hades walks the grove. Sometimes, not often. But when he does, he says nothing. He watches. He listens. He respects. Because he understands. Some memories are not meant to fade. Some stories are not meant to be judged. They are simply meant to exist. It is said that the river Mnemosyne, the river of memory, twin to Lethe, flows near the grove, unseen. The Orphic rite spoke of it, offered it as a choice, to drink from Lethe and forget, or from Mnemosyne and remember all. Few choose memory, fewer still are allowed. But the ghosts who stay, they seem to have chosen without choosing. They remember, not just who they were, but what they were part of. Sometimes, when the underworld shifts slightly, as it does over the centuries, one of these ghosts will rise. They will walk to the edge of the grove. They will turn, look once more at what they have remembered, and then they vanish, not upward, not downward, but inward, into the deep heart of the underworld itself. It is believed that when a ghost fully accepts its memory, not just its sweetness, but its sorrow, it is gently woven into the fabric of the underworld. That a tree grows stronger, that a river deepens, that a new song enters the wind, and they are gone, not erased, integrated. Persephone tends to the grove in winter. She leaves no footprints, but where she walks, the memories glow brighter for a time. She hums sometimes, and the ghosts pause their own whispers to listen, not because she is queen, but because she remembers too. Every spring, she returns to the upper world, but every autumn, she brings with her new memories, petals, tokens, dreams half forgotten by mortals. She plants them softly in the grove. They take root and bloom in stillness. There are ghosts, too, who are not yet aware they have stayed. They sit beside Lethe's banks, but never sip. They say they are only resting. They say they are waiting for someone. A mother, a child, a friend. Sometimes they wait for centuries. Time does not press them. The underworld is patient, and when at last they realize their wait is over, or their someone has already passed, they stand, and the river greets them with its soft mist, and they forget, and they move on. But while they stayed, they were ghosts, and in their stillness, they made space for stories, for sorrow, for songs, for memory. The underworld is not just a place of endings. It is a library, a cathedral of what was once loved. The ghosts who stay are not lost. They are pages still being read, and when they finally close, the echo of their voice remains in the hush between footsteps. In the ripple on the river, in the gentle hum of sleep. Even gods grow quiet, in the high halls of Olympus, where once laughter echoed and storms raged with divine drama. The thrones have grown still, not empty, just unlit. The great names still live in myth, but not all gods were destined for eternity. In memory, some, once praised in homes and villages now buried by time, have faded not with violence, but with neglect. These are the forgotten gods, not cursed, not punished, just remembered less, and in time, not at all. In the far reaches of the underworld, beyond Elysium, past Tartarus, below the rivers, there is a soft plain with no light source, yet nothing is in shadow. It is called by no name, and few souls arrive. There on purpose. It is where the forgotten gods rest, not banished, not imprisoned, simply settled. They do not look like statues. They do not carry the grandeur of Zeus or the brilliance of Apollo. They appear as they were last remembered, sometimes as whispers, sometimes as a smell in the air, sometimes as faces blurred like dreams, they drift through the plain like mist that has chosen to stop moving. One walks slowly, carrying a basket of wind. She was once worshipped by sailors before storms had names. They offered her knots and songs. She guided their sails with breath and silence. One prays to her now. But she still carries her basket, though the winds never leave it. Another leans against a tree that doesn't grow, but doesn't die. His name is lost, but he was once called upon by carpenters for blessings in bending wood. He hums a soft rhythm with his hands on the bark, as if measuring the grain of time. There is one who weeps, but not sadly. He was once the god of forgotten names. Ironically, he remains, still known only by the feeling of almost remembering. He does not mourn the lost. He simply watches others pass through the plain and smiles when they pause, not because they know him, but because something in their spirit recognizes the shape of forgotten prayer. Hades visits this place rarely, not out of neglect, but reverence that he knows that memory cannot hold all things. That worship has its tides, and he built no throne here, only silence. Persephone, however, comes more often. She sits with the forgotten gods during the winter months, when the world above forgets even the sun. She braids dried flowers and places them where their altars might once have stood. The gods do not speak of their pasts. They have outlived the need to be praised. They simply remain. One might ask, what becomes of a god when no one believes? The answer is simple. They rest. Godhood is not destroyed. It is released. Some return to the great murmur of chaos, their divinity dissolving like dew into morning. Some transform, becoming myths about myths. The inspiration for dreams, for nameless comforts, for quiet strengths we do not understand but feel. And some, a rare few, wake again, because belief is a strange current. Sometimes, in the whisper of a story, in the flicker of a candle, in a word spoken aloud without understanding why. A god stirs, a forgotten name surfaces, not in grandeur, but in recognition. A child, somewhere far above, plays beside a stream and hums to the water. She doesn't know why, but the tune is old, very old. The underworld, the goddess of rippling waters, blinks, only once. But she smiles, not because she has been remembered, but because she was never truly gone. There is a grove at the edge of this plain, where the air feels slightly warmer, like dusk. The gods who gather here are not forgotten fully, but fading. Their names still exist in footnotes. Their temples in crumbled stone. They hold hands sometimes. They share memories and gestures, not words. One remembers a feast held in her honor every solstice, now long past. Another remembers the feel of goat's milk poured into clay bowls as an offering. They do not lament the loss. They savor the echo, because the gods, unlike mortals, are not bound to time. Even a single whisper can stretch across centuries, anchoring a fragment of their being in the world of the living. And when the last whisper dies, they walk slowly to the center of the plain and lie down, and the earth accepts them. They become part of the underworld, not as rulers, not as judges, but as roots. Roots that feed the dreams of the dead, roots that hold the stillness together. And so, when mortals say the gods are eternal, they are not wrong, but they are incomplete, because eternity is not always shining. Sometimes it is soft, sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is a name that sits at the back of your mind, warm and unspoken, like a friend you loved once, long ago. The forgotten gods do not fear being lost. They understand what mortals rarely do. That to be forgotten is not the end. It is simply another kind of silence. One that listens. One that waits. And in the underworld, all things find their way home, even gods. Most believe the underworld is a single place, a vast realm hidden beneath the earth, ruled by Hades and softened by Persephone, shaped by rivers, judges, and ancient memory. But even the underworld has layers, beneath its halls, beyond its fields, past the resting places of souls, and even the shadows of forgotten gods. There are regions so still, so quiet. They are spoken of only in breathless myth. These are the realms beneath the realms, not lower in space, but deeper in meaning. Places where silence has settled into shape, where forgetting is not an act, but a nature, where even death comes to rest. The First of these is known only by a gesture. The soft touch of two fingers drawn across a closed eyelid. It is called nekra by some, a name carried down only in scraps of Orphic hymns. A realm of unshaped souls, those that were never born, or were remembered for too short a time to gather form. Here, the air is not AI or it is the sigh of those never held. And the souls who rest in nekra are not sad. They are not alone. They are simply unwritten pages, folded gently into a book never opened. Persephone visits them sometimes, not with flowers, but with rain. Soft drops that fall from her hands, carrying the memory of touch, and the unformed shimmer in response. Like morning mist through a sleeping orchard, they will never rise, but they are not gone. Beneath even nekra lies the hollow hall, not built, not discovered, but dreamed into existence by the first soul who asked a question the gods could not answer. It is said that Hades himself does not go there, not because he cannot, but because he chooses not to disturb the stillness that in the hollow hall. Questions rest, not answered, not echoing, but at peace. The father who never knew why his child stopped speaking, that a priest who wondered if the stars he praised ever looked back, that a mother who asked if her son forgave her. These questions hang in the air like old light, warm, weightless, no longer seeking. Some say there is a well in the center of the hollow hall, not of water, but of absence. The it reflects nothing, makes no sound when a stone is dropped, and yet those who find it feel comfort, because here, at last, is something that asks for nothing. In o memory. In o name. Just presence. A being with no burden. A pause too deep to disturb. Further still, if one does not turn back, if one moves not with will, but with surrender, one may pass into the chorus of stone, not made of rocks or marble, but of lives long stilled. Here, the oldest presences hum, not with sound, but with pressure, the feeling of weight, of time, of rest beyond imagination. This is where the first titans fell, not the ones of rebellion, but the ones who simply lay down. They are not conscious, they are not sleeping, they are settled, like mountains beneath oceans. Their forms shape the land above. When earthquakes strike the mortal world, it is said to be the turning of their dreams. But these dreams are not visions, they are remembrances of silence. The chorus does not speak, but it holds all memory in stillness. If a soul sits long enough among them, motionless, thoughtless, still, it may merge, not dissolve, but join, becoming part of the endless choir that keeps the underworld grounded. These are the roots beneath roots, the hush beneath hush, the layer of myth before myth. Even the gods are humbled here. It is said that once, long ago, after his first winter as king, Hades walked to the edge of the hollow hall. He placed his crown upon the stone floor and waited. He stayed for 3 days and nights. When he returned, he said nothing, but from that day forward, he no longer raised his voice, even when judging kings or binding titans, because the realms below taught him, power is not forced. It is presence, and silence is its greatest teacher. The final layer is not truly a place. It is more like a drift, a zone of thoughtless rest, called by some lethera, meaning the quieting. Here, even soul and form let go. The boundary between what is and is not dissolves, and what remains is unshaped stillness. You do not arrive at lethera, you become it. Only a few souls ever pass into this state, not through effort, but through utter peace. They are not worshipped, they are not missed. But sometimes, when the wind pauses in a forest, when an old stone hums softly under the sun, when a child breathes deeply in sleep without dreaming, that is lethera. A breath that never ends. The underworld is deep, not because of darkness, but because of layers of meaning, of memory, of myth. The further one drifts, the less one carries, until at last, there is nothing left to set down. And in that moment, the soul is no longer a traveler. It becomes part of the place itself, not vanished, not erased, but woven into the hush, where even gods tread lightly, and stories rest in peace. It is not often spoken aloud, but in some of the older myths, those whispered by fires no longer burning, there is a tale not of death, nor judgment, nor even gods, but of a pause. A single day when the entire underworld slept, not in slumber. Like mortals know, with dreams and stirring, but in absolute stillness. A moment when every soul, every god, every river and echo and breeze beneath the earth held its breath. It was not a punishment, not a curse. It was simply time folding in on itself, a natural breath in the endless rhythm of death and rest. The underworld is a place of motionless motion, where even stillness has current. But on this day, even that current paused. No one knows exactly when it happened. Some say it was long before Hades arrived, when Nyx herself blinked slowly and all her children followed her into quiet. Others believe it came much later, after so many souls had arrived. So many tears had fallen into the river Cocytus that even the underworld needed to exhale. What is known, what is told, is that the signs were gentle. First, Cerberus lay down, not to sleep, but to rest, his head flat upon his paws, eyes open. But unseeing that, he growled not at newcomers, he barked at nothing, he simply stopped. Then Charon's or drifted from his hand, not dropped, not forgotten. He simply set it across his lap, closed his eyes, and sat still in his boat, which no longer swayed. No souls crossed the river that day. No one tried to. They, too, had grown still. Even the newly dead arrived and paused at the banks, uncertain, but not afraid, because the air itself felt different, soft, like the hush between waves. The judges of the dead, who had ruled for millennia without break, each rose from their stone thrones and stepped down, their verdicts left unread. Aeacus did not weigh hearts. Minos closed the great book of laws. Rhadamanthus lit a single lamp and sat beside it, watching the light without speaking. One questioned them, because no soul stirred enough to wonder. In the fields of Asphodel, the great gray meadow where most souls drift in quiet thought, a silence fell even deeper. The wind ceased. The grasses, usually murmuring in waves of old memory, stood still. Souls who had once wandered aimlessly now Saturday, not together, not alone, just present. As though they knew they were part of something sacred. Persephone felt at first a shift beneath her skin. As if the pomegranate in her chest had ripened too far, then gone quiet. She walked the paths of the underworld, through tunnels carved by ancient memory, past statues that no longer held names, and up through the garden that blooms only in death. There, the flowers had closed their petals, not wilted, not withered, just closed. As if dreaming with her, Hades rose from his throne that day, not to rule, but to listen. And when he stood at the center of the underworld, he heard nothing, not even Lethe whispered, not even Phlegethon burned, not even time moved. And in that absence, he understood. This was not a flaw. This was not decay. This was completion. A sacred, eternal pause. Even the ghosts who had refused to forget stood silently at the edge of the grove of memory, their endless loops suspended like breath drawn in, but not released. The forgotten gods, scattered and soft in their plane of unspoken names, looked up, not in expectation, but in acknowledgement. They, too, had waited for this moment. A time when divinity meant nothing, and everything. A time when even myths bowed their heads. No mortal ever recorded this day, because no mortal was meant to. But the underworld remembers, not as an event, but as a feeling. A stillness so vast, so total, that it softened the very fabric of death. Even Thanatos, god of peaceful passing, lowered his wings that day. He sat beside his twin, Hypnos, in a hall of black marble, and together they closed their eyes, not to sleep, not to end, but to simply be, twin gods of hush, breathing as one. When the day ended, if it ever ended, there was no sound, no trumpet, no breath drawn in. The motion resumed not with decision, but with acceptance. The Lethe stirred, Cerberus blinked, Charon took up his oar, the grasses swayed, and souls began to walk once more. Not hurried, not reluctant, just gently moving, as if awakened from a dream too peaceful to disturb. Persephone returned to her garden. She touched the petals. They opened, not as if reborn, as if continuing. Hades sat once more on his throne, but his gaze was softened, his silence deeper. As if he carried something from that day, a memory not of power, but of presence. Of peace. Since then, the underworld has never truly slept again, but in its deepest corners, A trace remains, a tone in the silence, a hush beneath the rivers, a pause behind every judgment, every step, every whisper. It waits, not to return, but to remind that even in death, even in stillness, even in myth, there is a breath held gently. Between worlds, a breath you now share. Asterisk, there will come a time, far beyond the years of gods and mortals, when even the stars will dim, not suddenly, not with fire, but gently, like the last candle in a vast, empty hall. The universe, once filled with laughter, thunder, war, and wonder, will settle, not into death, but into rest. And when that time comes, long after Olympus has faded, long after Earth itself has turned silent and cold, there will still be a place where memory is held, a place where stories still hum, a place called the Underworld. It does not need the sun to live. It does not require prayer to stand. It has existed beneath endings for longer than time can trace. And it will remain even when the stars above have forgotten how to shine. In this distant future, souls no longer arrive as they once did. Mortals have long since ceased to be born. Civilizations have turned to dust. Even language itself has gone quiet. But in the stillness, something remains. Echoes, they drift in gently, not as people, not as ghosts, but as feelings, soft pulses of memory that float down like feathers through time. And the underworld receives them, not to judge, not to weigh, but simply to hold. Hades still sits upon his throne, but his face is not as it once was. His crown is worn smooth by time. His eyes are ancient beyond counting. He does not speak. There is no need that he watches the hush deepen. He watches memory turn to quiet. And he smiles, not in joy, but in peace, because this is what he was always meant to guard, not the dead, but the space where endings come to rest. Persephone no longer travels upward. There is no spring left to bring, but her garden still blooms in silence. The flowers do not open. They do not close. They simply exist, glowing faintly in the dark, and she tends them with hands that have never aged, planting memories like seeds. Harvesting stillness, she hums sometimes, not songs of grief, but lullabies for a universe finally asleep. The rivers flow slower now. Lethe has grown wide and still, a great silver mirror in which the cosmos reflects its own fading shape. Even Phlegethon, once roaring with flame, flickers low, less a fire, more aglow. Cocytus no longer weeps. It sighs gently as if releasing the very last sorrow. The judges no longer sit in council. Their tasks have ended. Aeacus, Minos, and Rhadamanthus have taken off their robes. They sit together now beneath a great archway carved from the bones of forgotten stars. They do not speak. They play a quiet game with stones, and each piece they place is a story, not told aloud, simply understood. The ghosts have merged, not lost, but joined. Their memories now form the very fabric of the underworld, a woven tapestry of every thought, every touch, every whispered goodbye. They ripple gently through the stone, the air, the soil. That if one stands still long enough in the underworld of this final age, they might feel a warmth beneath their feet. That warmth is us, all of us, remembered, loved, and at rest. Even the forgotten gods, those whose names once disappeared into silence, now rest fully. They have become features of the land. Point one is the curve of a hill. Another, the hush between footsteps. Point one, the faint scent that lingers when no flowers bloom. They are not worshipped, but they are present, forever part of the deep, knowing stillness. There is no longer any need for doorways, no need for gates. The underworld is not hidden. It is all that remains. A soft, endless space filled with what once was. And that is enough. One last being walks the realm. Not a god, not a soul, just a presence. It wears no face, carries no name. It is the keeper of hush, the guardian of the final breath, the scribe of stories never told. It walks through the underworld slowly, touching walls, petals, echoes. With each step, it murmurs a single word: stay. Not a command. An invitation. Because here, in this final place, all are welcome. No questions asked, no names required. Only presence, only peace. When the last echo fades, when the last flicker dims, when even the stars fall completely asleep, there will still be this place, not of fire, not of fear, but of stillness, not of acceptance, not of quiet beyond time. The underworld, not as end, but as cradle, holding everything that was, and softly, endlessly, say, rest.